I want to talk about the games a little bit. First of all, I think it's fantastic that you guys are still kind of staying true to the kind of games that you've always wanted to make. You know, obviously with Star Citizen, Chris, you can see the germs of your early Wing Commander games. You know, the original seeds kind of in a prototypical form in the kind of games that you're still making today. And obviously with David, a new version of Elite, you can go back to the original Elite and see kind of the same basic kind of framework. Obviously now, you know, writ on a much larger scale. I remember, I don't think I ever did at the time because I'm really not that imaginative, but certainly when the internet became a thing and being able to get people online and the MMO concept started to become real, one of my very first thoughts was, oh my God, can you imagine Elite where everyone is now a real living person? I want to ask you, David, when you were first building Elite, even as a single player experience, I always felt even as a single player game, that just your imagination kind of made you feel like it was a living populated world. Even kind of pre-internet and pre the concept of people playing together online, were you already kind of like thinking forward as to what might be possible when you could actually get everyone connected in that way?
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of the people on the comments of the Kickstarter forum actually posted a video that I'd completely forgotten about. This is in, I think it was 1987 or 1988. I was interviewed on live German television in German, and I had a translator. Anyway, the question was, well, what would you do with Elite differently if you were to do it now? And the answer was multiplayer, because just at that point, connectivity was getting fast enough that at least within an office type environment, you could have a fast enough connection to be able to play against other real people. And we'd already started doing that with some games at that point. And it's that sort of experience that felt so different. So, wow, wouldn't it be really great to do this with a game like Elite? And I think that's, ever since then, I've certainly wanted to do it. And, you know, as technology's got better and as fast internet now is very nearly ubiquitous, the ability to do it, the ease for people to participate is just so much greater. And so I don't mean necessarily every ship should be a player, because then you get into a frame of mind that you can't kill anything without really upsetting someone. I mean, with Elite Dangerous, it's still, a lot of the ships you encounter won't be real players, but we will call out of the ships that you meet who is a real player. We have a way of distinguishing them in the game. They're actually part of this group of pilots that you're part of, and it will call out above them, say, essentially what it means is this is a real player, but in the game fabric, so this is a group who's a member of the same organisation as you. In other words, we don't want this game to be all about player versus player kills, but the point is it encourages a lot of cooperation. And it will be possible to do player versus player kills if that's what people want to do.
And Chris, I know, yeah, I mean, you started out with the Wing Commander games that were kind of a little less free-form exploration and more kind of a linear story experience. But then you did kind of go into some of the stuff that David had been doing with like economy and trading exploration with the freelancer and privateer games. How is the emergence of online since those games first appeared changed the way that you're approaching Star Citizen?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you probably do remember because you were back at PC Gamer at the time, but you remember my pitch for Freelancer was essentially we had the original single player game, and then the stage 2 was a massively multiplayer game, and I'd left Origin and we were working on Ultima Online, and sort of I was seeing that in the early gestation stage, and then it was the first sort of big successful MMO. And so actually when I announced Freelancer, I was talking about it being this big, the second stage was going to have, thousands of players, and we would have a dynamic economy. And I sort of pitched all these things that eventually Eve delivered on. But I never got to really deliver that because, I sold the company to Microsoft and I was burned out on games. And so I left it, and the game was released a few years later, but it wasn't sort of as big or as grand as I was planning it to be and was working towards it being. So in some ways, Star Citizen is sort of me being able to come back and finish that off properly, and also do it to a level of fidelity that I couldn't do back 10 years ago. And so it's something I wanted to do for a long time, just for the exact same reasons that you're talking about, Gary. Like when you first played Elite, I mean, yeah, you sort of in your mind you flew around in that world, and I think back on it now, and it obviously if you look back, it's very primitive. But when I was playing that, back in England in '84. It was my mind. I can't remember whether it was 6 missions or 5 missions, David, on that one story thread that you had.
What platform?
PBC, of course. I mean, yeah, that's what I played the original version. I was making games on the micro. I wasn't not any of those newfangled Amiga things.
Well, that's right. That's when the PC was a generic term to mean when the BBC Micro was around, it was a PC.
Yeah, personal computer, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my point was just that in my mind I created this whole it felt so rich and deep, and yeah, I mean that's kind of the world that you just felt like if you could do this and have your friends and you could all be doing it and run across real people as well as NPCs, that would be great. And the key is kind of what David alluded to, which is I think is a debate that David has with his community, and it's a debate I have with my community, because there is definitely this whole sort of PvP and PvE sort of factions that go on, and they're all pretty rapid. And so I think David also believes that you can sort of create a game that can cater to both sets of players, and it will be okay. But it certainly is. That is, I would say, if I was going to give you a touch paper to set up a fight with your community, that's the one to do it.
Well, the discussions have come up already, and we have this concept of groups where you can join a group which doesn't allow it or does allow it on a user choice.
Yeah, no. David, I want to ask you just about the design of the game. One of the things I've found frustrating with MMOs, really since World of Warcraft, is that so many games that have tried to be popular in the MMO space have really kind of followed the same model. Go kill 10 of these things, and I'll give you a slightly better piece of armor, and then there's an economy, and there are guilds, and in every new game the skin is different, but the underlying model seems to be the same. Obviously you've got a different engine in the sense of a 3D space game, but what are the kind of the MMO pitfalls that you're trying to avoid with the new Elite?
Well, I don't see it as an MMO in the traditional sense. In that sense, I mean, this is a sort of game where you can save your position and come back to it days later when knowing that your ship won't have been destroyed because it's sort of parked in a field somewhere. What we're trying to do, and this comes from the sort of mantra of essentially we're writing a game here for ourselves. So what would I want from a game? I want to be able to play a great game without being griefed by teenagers. But having said that, I do want there to be a feeling of risk out there. So with Elite, there was something great about when you had a really valuable cargo, wanting to make it to the space station. That almost like a guy who's almost falling down with thirst, seeing an oasis and crawling ever closer. You finally dock and you have that sigh of relief and you go, thank God, I was safe. You'll get that sort of feeling. But where you can also bring in friends to help you. That we'll have a much broader range of what you can, in terms of the values of cargoes that you can have. So you could have something very special that you will get your friend to come in and help you, sort of live, who will come and join your game. We're not talking a sort of game where you have sort of session-based lobbies and all this thing waiting for people to join. It's completely dynamic, and we've got that working already. But that sort of approach is fantastic from a game point of view. I'll meet you at Lave Station in 5 minutes. That sort of thing, to be able to do that, to be able to regard it as just an extension of the real world. That's the intention here.
It sounds like David's talking about the same kind of story-driven experience that Elite had. And Chris, I know you've always felt very strongly about story, and you were one of the big pioneers of kind of cinematic narratives in games. How's that going to be a part? Again, when you've got a big online multiplayer experience, that it sounds like that's what Star Citizen is moving towards. How do you preserve the single player, the feeling of a rich, immersive story experience in a game like that? Because a lot of MMOs have not succeeded there.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, we have a single-player game built inside Star Citizen Universe, which is the Squadron 42 sort of campaign. And so in that particular case, the idea is that you sort of sign up, and it's a Wing Commander-style game. You basically sign up for the military, and you do a tour of duty, and it will be very much like a Wing Commander in terms of branching missions with positive and negative outcomes. And then once you finish your campaign, which I think is going to be about 50 missions now, at the end of it, you'll sort of muster out into this massive open world and make your fortune. So kind of like the idea is, just like you would if you signed up for the military. When you're in the military, you sort of, you don't make your own schedule. You don't decide where you're going to go. The military tells you where you're going to go. So it's actually very appropriate for a single player style game because in the fiction itself, it makes sense why you're sort of locked into a certain direction or path. And then we let you, once you finish that, you sort of muster out, and you've got some money and you've got some reputation for what you've achieved in the military, and then you're in this big open world and you can kind of go where you want. And then on the story side in the big open world, I'm taking a slightly different approach to say what I maybe have done in the past. So we're definitely going to have sort of small narrative sort of mission, I guess, threads, whether it's 5 missions here or 6 missions here that will be spotted across the galaxy. But one of the big ideas is that we're going to constantly update and create content for the game. So the way our headcount works is that we actually ramp up to our full staff for live release. And then at live release onwards, there's a team that's dedicated to constantly adding content to the universe, whether it says, 4 or 5 mission thread, or whether it's a new ship, or whether it's a new star system, as we go forward. And the idea is that on the content side, we're actually seeing what the players are doing, and we're reacting to what the players are doing. And I think it'll be kind of interesting, because I think that the players and audience will have a lot of fun, because if we riff off some of their actions, they'll feel like it's a living universe, because it's sort of reacting to kind of the things they're doing. David's talked about some of the similar stuff in his pitch, because I think we both have this kind of idea that it would be really cool for the players to impact and affect the universe, so it sort of grows with them. Because I think if that happens, you really sort of feel an ownership and a participation in it. And that's kind of and that's not any sort of like marketing technique to try and get extra money or anything. It's all about, that's the kind of game I want to play, and I think that would be super cool.